Anna woke up to the sound of her alarm, which seemed louder than usual this morning. She rubbed her eyes, yawned, and stretched before heading to the small kitchen of her tiny apartment. Her morning routine was simple but precise. She boiled water for tea, toasted a slice of bread, and glanced at her reflection in the mirror while sipping her tea. Life hadn't been easy for her. She worked long hours as a waitress in a busy café, yet she carried herself with a quiet dignity that spoke of inner strength. Despite her exhaustion from yesterday's long shift, Anna felt a sense of calm as she got ready for work. She put on her neatly pressed uniform, tied her hair back, and checked her appearance one last time. Today, like every other day, she reminded herself to stay positive and do her best. She believed that every interaction, no matter how small, mattered. Her optimism was something she clung to, even when the world seemed indifferent. The walk to the cafe was short, but Anna took it slowly, enjoying the early morning air. The streets were already bustling with activity. Delivery trucks rolled past, people hurried to work, and the aroma of freshly baked bread from nearby bakeries filled the air. She waved at a neighbor who greeted her cheerfully, and she smiled in return. Even though she was heading into a long, tiring day, she found small moments of joy in the ordinary things around her. Arriving at the cafe, Anna unlocked the door and stepped inside. The familiar sight of tables neatly arranged, the counter polished to a shine, and the soft hum of the espresso machine gave her a sense of comfort. She liked the cafe. It was modest, yet cozy, and it felt like a little world of its own. Her colleagues were already there, preparing for the morning rush. She greeted them warmly, exchanging smiles and small talk, and soon, the smell of coffee and pastries filled the air as they began setting up for customers. As the morning progressed, the cafe slowly began to fill. Regulars came in, nodding at Anna with familiarity. She knew many of them by name and remembered their usual orders. For her, serving them was more than just a job. It was a way to connect, to share a little kindness in their daily lives. Each smile she received, each thank you from a customer, felt like a small reward for the hard work she put in. She moved quickly and efficiently, taking orders, refilling coffee cups, and making sure everything was in order. Amid the usual morning crowd, a new figure entered the cafe. He was different from the others. Tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, with an air of confidence that seemed to fill the room. His expensive watch glinted under the cafe lights, and his shoes shone as if polished just for the morning. Anna noticed him instantly, but she didn't let it distract her. She greeted him politely, ready to take his order like she would with any other customer. Yet, there was something about him, something intimidating in the way he carried himself. The man sat down at a corner table, surveying the cafe with a critical eye. Anna sensed immediately that he was not like the usual crowd. He seemed used to getting what he wanted, accustomed to people bending to his whims. There was a sharpness in his gaze, a hint of impatience, and a subtle arrogance that made her wary. But Anna was not one to be easily shaken. She reminded herself that her job was to serve all customers with respect and professionalism, regardless of their attitude. As she approached his table, she kept her smile steady. "Good morning, sir. What can I get for you today?" she asked politely. Her tone was calm, friendly, and welcoming, a skill she had perfected over countless interactions with all kinds of people. The man barely glanced at her before dismissing her with a wave of his hand, muttering about the menu being too ordinary. Anna took note of his criticism but didn't let it affect her. She knew that part of her role was to remain composed, no matter how challenging a customer might be. She suggested a few popular items, highlighting their freshness and quality. "Our croissants are freshly baked this morning, and the cappuccino is made from locally roasted beans," she explained, hoping to pique his interest. The man raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed, yet Anna continued with confidence. She had learned over time that the key to dealing with difficult customers was patience and composure. Each word she spoke was measured, polite, yet firm, showing that she respected herself as much as she respected her guests. Around them, the cafe hummed with activity. The clinking of coffee cups, the soft chatter of other patrons, and the occasional laughter of a child created a warm, welcoming environment. Anna moved seamlessly between tables, balancing trays of drinks and food, ensuring that each customer felt attended to. Despite the busy morning, she never lost her calm demeanor. She had a way of making everyone feel seen, valued, and important, even when she was under pressure. Little did Anna know that this ordinary morning, which began like any other, would soon take an unexpected turn. The man at the corner table, with his sharp eyes and critical words, was about to challenge her in ways she hadn't anticipated. Yet, Anna remained unaware of the storm brewing, focused solely on her work and the simple principle she lived by: treat everyone with respect, no matter who they are. In the ordinary rhythm of the café, amidst the aroma of coffee and the chatter of customers, Anna's day had started like any other. But sometimes, even in the most ordinary moments, extraordinary events are quietly waiting to unfold. And as the clock ticked on, the encounter that would change everything for Anna was slowly drawing near, though she had no idea just how significant it would be. Anna had just finished attending to a table of regular customers when she noticed the man at the corner table leaning back slightly in his chair, scanning the café with a sharp, scrutinizing gaze. It wasn't just his appearance that stood out. His presence seemed to fill the space, making everyone else almost fade into the background. He exuded confidence, maybe even arrogance, the kind of self-assuredness that demanded attention without even trying. Anna had seen many kinds of customers before, some friendly, some rude, some indifferent. But there was something different about this man. As she approached his table with her usual polite smile, she could feel the weight of his gaze on her. He barely looked up when she said, "Good morning, sir. Can I help you with your order?" His eyes swept over the menu in his hand, but there was a flicker of impatience in his glance, as if the very act of looking at the menu was beneath him. "The menu? It's so basic," he said abruptly, his tone carrying a mix of disdain and impatience. "Don't you have anything more sophisticated?" He gestured vaguely at the menu, as if it were something he barely tolerated being forced to glance at. Anna could feel a twinge of irritation at his comment, but she carefully kept her expression neutral. She had learned long ago that a professional attitude could diffuse tension better than any sharp retort. "I understand, sir," she replied evenly, her voice calm and polite. "We do have some popular choices that our customers love. I can also recommend some items that are freshly prepared today." Her tone was measured, warm, and welcoming, yet firm enough to signal that she would not be easily intimidated. The man looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Anna noticed the small details, the slight crease in his brow, the tightness in his jaw, that hinted at someone who was used to control and being obeyed. He wasn't used to being questioned or even suggested options politely. Most people likely tried to please him quickly, without hesitation. But Anna had a different approach. She treated every customer with respect but never allowed rudeness to go unchecked. She suggested a few items, pointing out their qualities. "Our croissants are freshly baked this morning, light and buttery, and the cappuccino is made from locally roasted beans. Many of our regulars say it's the best coffee in the area." Her words were simple, but she spoke with confidence and a sense of pride in her work. She wanted him to see that while the cafe might be modest, the care and effort put into the food and drinks were genuine. The billionaire raised one perfectly sculpted eyebrow and smirked slightly. "I see. But this still seems ordinary. I'm used to better. Surely you have something that stands out? Something unique?" His tone carried a challenge, almost daring her to prove herself. Other customers glanced toward the table, curious about the interaction. Anna could sense the tension in the air but refused to let it rattle her. She took a moment before replying, choosing her words carefully. "We do focus on quality over extravagance, sir. What makes our cafe special is the attention to detail and the care we put into each dish. Even in something simple, there is room for excellence." Her voice was calm and steady, her eyes meeting his without flinching. There was no bitterness, no hint of anger, just quiet confidence. The man leaned back, crossing his arms and tilting his head slightly. He seemed to be studying her, perhaps trying to gauge whether she was nervous, unsure, or just another timid employee. But Anna wasn't intimidated. She had faced difficult people before. Customers who complained, strangers who were rude, and situations where she had to stand her ground. She had learned that composure was more powerful than confrontation, that respect earned respect, and that sometimes silence and calmness could speak louder than words. "Very well," he said finally, his tone softer but still skeptical. "I will try your recommendation. Let's see if it meets the standard I expect." There was a pause, almost as if he was testing her patience or gauging her reaction. Anna smiled politely and noted his order, retreating to the counter to prepare it with the same care she gave all other customers. As she worked, she could feel his eyes occasionally on her, following her movements. It was unnerving, but she didn't let it show. She moved efficiently, balancing multiple tasks at once, filling coffee cups, checking on other tables, and preparing pastries, while keeping her mind focused on her usual routine. Despite the man's intimidating presence, Anna maintained her usual grace and professionalism. Meanwhile, the atmosphere in the café subtly shifted. Regular customers noticed the unusual tension, whispering quietly among themselves, curious about the stern-looking man in the corner. Some of them had likely encountered challenging customers in their lives, and they watched with interest to see how Anna would handle this one. But Anna was calm, almost serene, treating the situation as she would any other challenge. Step by step, with patience, skill, and integrity. When she finally delivered his order, she did so with a polite smile. "Here's your croissant and cappuccino, sir. I hope you enjoy them." She set the plate and cup on the table carefully, making sure everything was perfect. The man looked down at the food and drink, seemingly evaluating every detail. Anna stood back a little, giving him space, and watched quietly. For a moment there was silence. He took a sip of the cappuccino, and Anna held her breath, curious about his reaction. It was the first real interaction she had with someone so obviously wealthy and influential, and she was aware that any misstep could be used against her. Yet, she also felt a quiet pride in standing her ground and remaining professional despite his intimidating demeanor. This first encounter, which seemed ordinary on the surface, was quietly setting the stage for something much bigger. The man's arrogance, Anna's composure, and the tension between them created a charged atmosphere that hinted at the challenges and revelations to come. In that busy cafe, amidst the smells of coffee and baked goods, a simple morning routine had turned into a subtle battle of wit, patience, and respect. A battle Anna was ready to face. Anna had delivered the man's order with her usual polite smile, trying to keep the atmosphere light and professional. She had hoped that perhaps the meal would soften his stern demeanor, or at least make him pause before speaking sharply. But she quickly realized that this man was not one to be easily pleased. As she stepped back to attend to other tables, she noticed him leaning forward slightly, a faint smirk playing on his lips, as if he had already found something wrong. "You know," he began, his voice low but cutting, "I've seen better service at far cheaper places. Are you sure you know what you're doing?" The words were delivered casually, yet there was no mistaking the condescension behind them. Anna felt a brief pang of irritation, but she immediately reminded herself to remain calm. She had faced criticism before, often unfair, but she had learned that keeping her composure was far more powerful than reacting emotionally. She approached his table again, keeping her smile steady. "I'm confident in my work, sir. If there's anything specific you'd like adjusted, I'll be happy to assist." Her tone was calm, polite, and professional, but there was an underlying firmness, a silent message that she would not be belittled. The man's gaze shifted toward her, sharp and piercing. "You're confident, aren't you? But confidence doesn't make up for lack of skill. Honestly, I expected someone with a bit more intelligence behind the counter." His words cut deeper than a simple complaint about service. They were personal, aimed at her character rather than her performance. The cafe seemed to grow quieter around them, as if the walls themselves were listening. A few nearby customers glanced nervously, unsure how Anna would respond to such an audacious remark. Anna's hands tightened slightly on her notepad, but she did not flinch. She had dealt with many rude people before, yet there was something different about this man. He wasn't just dissatisfied, he was testing her, probing to see how she would react under pressure. She drew a slow, steady breath and reminded herself of all the struggles she had overcome in life. She thought of the long hours at school, the multiple jobs she had juggled to support herself, and the countless times she had faced unfair treatment with dignity. This was just another moment to stand her ground. "I understand your perspective, sir," Anna said, her voice steady and composed. "But I assure you, I take pride in my work, and I do my best with every customer. Intelligence is not always measured by outward appearances or words. Sometimes, it's shown in patience, effort, and dedication. Qualities I believe everyone should value." Her words were simple, yet deliberate, carefully chosen to assert her self-respect without escalating the conflict. For a moment, the man was silent, clearly surprised by her composed response. His smirk faltered slightly, replaced by a look of curiosity and, perhaps, faint annoyance. He had likely expected her to either argue back, apologize nervously, or lower her gaze in embarrassment. Instead, she had responded with calm confidence, refusing to be demeaned by his words. The café seemed to hold its breath, as if the other patrons sensed the tension and the quiet power in her reply. But the man was not done. "Do you really think you can talk to someone like me this way? Do you understand who I am?" he asked, his tone sharp, testing her further. The underlying threat in his words was unmistakable. He wanted to intimidate her, to remind her of his status, wealth, and influence. Yet Anna met his gaze without fear, her posture straight and her voice unwavering. "Sir," she replied, "I understand that you are a very successful man and I respect that, but respect is mutual. Being wealthy or powerful does not give anyone the right to insult or demean others. I treat everyone with courtesy, and in return, I expect the same. That's how I measure respect, not by the size of someone's bank account or the brand of their suit." Her words were measured but pointed, delivered with a quiet authority that left no room for misinterpretation. The man leaned back slightly, momentarily taken aback. No one had ever spoken to him this way before, at least not in public. He had been accustomed to people either fearing him or flattering him, but Anna's calm yet firm response was entirely unexpected. She had not raised her voice, she had not shouted, and yet she had made her position clear. She would not be humiliated or intimidated. Anna stepped back, giving him space while maintaining eye contact. She could feel the weight of the moment, the silent attention of the café, and the shift in energy around the table. Her colleagues pretended to be busy with other tasks, but she knew some of them were watching, quietly impressed by her courage and composure. She had turned what could have been an embarrassing confrontation into a demonstration of self-respect and professionalism. The billionaire's expression was unreadable now, but there was a flicker of something new in his eyes, surprise, perhaps even a hint of respect. He had expected to assert dominance, to belittle her effortlessly, but instead, he was met with dignity, calm, and intelligence. This small yet powerful act of standing up for herself had shifted the balance of the interaction completely. Anna continued her work around the café, serving other customers with her usual grace, but she remained aware of the man's presence. He was still watching, perhaps reevaluating his assumptions, silently taking note of her composure and courage. The morning continued, and the café hummed with its usual rhythm, but for Anna, this encounter had become the central focus, a test of character, patience, and resilience that she was passing with quiet strength. In that ordinary café, during what seemed like a regular morning, a simple interaction had turned into a meaningful exchange of values. One person had tried to assert superiority through insult, while the other had chosen integrity, calm, and self-respect. And though the situation had not yet reached its conclusion, it was clear that Anna had made an impression. A first, powerful step toward the extraordinary events that were about to unfold after the billionaire's sharp insult, The café seemed to grow quieter, as if the walls themselves were absorbing the tension in the air. Customers whispered softly to each other, curious about the bold interaction, while Anna stepped back slightly, her hands clasped in front of her, taking a moment to gather herself. Though her exterior remained calm, inside, a storm of emotions swirled. She felt a mix of surprise, frustration, and determination. The words had stung, but she refused to let them control her. Anna reminded herself that she had faced challenges like this before, many times in her life. Growing up, she had learned early that the world wasn't always kind. There were people who would judge you without knowing you, who would underestimate you because of your appearance, your background, or your current circumstances. She had encountered teachers who doubted her abilities, colleagues who dismissed her ideas, and strangers who treated her unfairly. Each time, she had faced the choice: stay silent and endure, or stand up and assert her worth. Over time, she had discovered that calm confidence and thoughtful words could often accomplish more than anger or shouting. Taking a deep breath, Anna reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She remembered the long hours she had spent studying while working part-time jobs to support herself. She remembered the exhaustion, the worry about bills, and the moments when she felt overwhelmed and alone. Yet she had persevered. She had learned to keep her dignity intact even in difficult circumstances, to maintain her composure, and to face challenges with courage. That inner strength was not something money could buy, and it was something that even the wealthiest people often lacked. As she looked at the man seated across the table, Anna realized that this was a different kind of challenge. He was not just a rude customer. He represented a mindset she had encountered only rarely: arrogance, entitlement, and the belief that status could justify disrespect. She recognized immediately that this was a test, perhaps unintentional, perhaps deliberate, but a test nonetheless. And she resolved not to fail it. Her mind worked quickly, organizing her thoughts into clear, confident statements. She didn't want to respond with anger, nor did she want to appear timid. She wanted her words to reflect not only her own dignity but also a larger principle: that respect is mutual, that character matters more than wealth or power, and that kindness and composure can be a quiet but formidable force. Anna took another slow, steadying breath. She felt a warmth of determination spread through her chest. This moment was not just about the insult. It was about standing up for herself, demonstrating that she would not be demeaned, and showing that courage could exist even in ordinary settings. She reminded herself that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. Her hands no longer trembled, her mind sharpened, and her heart beat steadily with resolve. She thought about how she wanted to respond, carefully choosing her approach. Reacting impulsively with anger could escalate the situation, turning it into a public confrontation that might reflect poorly on her. Staying silent, however, could give the billionaire the satisfaction of feeling superior, validating his disrespectful behavior. The solution, she realized, was a balanced response: calm, composed, and assertive, conveying her self-respect without demeaning him in return. As she prepared to approach his table again, she also reflected on the bigger picture. This encounter, while challenging, offered an opportunity for Anna to practice the qualities she valued most: poise, intelligence, and integrity. She realized that standing her ground here was not only about this single interaction but also about reinforcing her own sense of self-worth. Each decision she made, each word she chose, was an affirmation that she would not compromise her principles for the sake of appeasing someone else. While her thoughts were focused and deliberate, her exterior remained graceful and professional. She smoothed her uniform, adjusted her apron, and stepped forward with a polite smile. Customers continued to move about the cafe, but Anna felt a quiet inner focus, a sense of purpose that strengthened her resolve. She approached the billionaire's table with measured steps, each one reflecting her determination to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. When she reached him, she took a moment to make eye contact, letting him know that she was fully present and confident. Her voice, calm and steady, carried the weight of her inner conviction. "Sir," she began, "I understand that you may have expectations about the service here. I also understand that your experience and success have shaped your perspective. However, I believe that mutual respect is important in every interaction, regardless of one's position or wealth. I do my best with every customer, and I expect to be treated with the same courtesy that I extend to others. Even as she spoke, Anna felt a sense of calm triumph wash over her. She was asserting her dignity without resorting to anger or humiliation, showing the billionaire, and perhaps everyone in the café, that strength could be quiet yet powerful. She had transformed a potentially intimidating moment into an opportunity to demonstrate her character. As she stepped back slightly, giving him space to process her words, she felt a mix of relief and pride. The tension in the air seemed to shift, a subtle recognition that something significant had just occurred. The man, who had intended to assert dominance, now faced a display of confidence and self-respect he had not anticipated. Anna had turned the insult into a moment of empowerment, not just for herself, but for anyone watching. Her colleagues, who had been pretending to focus on their own tasks, exchanged impressed glances. Some customers whispered softly, sensing the quiet courage in her response. And Anna, while fully aware of the attention, remained grounded. She knew that this was only the beginning of a larger story, but she had already passed a crucial test of character. She had chosen inner strength over fear, dignity over submission, and courage over hesitation. In that ordinary café, during a morning that had started like any other, Anna's inner resolve had transformed an uncomfortable encounter into a powerful affirmation of her values. She realized that true strength came not from wealth, status, or outward power, but from the quiet determination to stand by one's principles, even in the face of challenge. And as she returned to her routine, serving other customers with her usual grace, she carried with her a renewed sense of confidence, knowing that she was ready for whatever came next. Anna took a deep breath, feeling the calm determination she had gathered in the previous moments settle firmly within her. She could feel the eyes of the café subtly on her, though she tried not to notice them. Her focus was entirely on the man in the corner, the billionaire whose arrogance had filled the room and whose words had tried to shake her confidence. She reminded herself that this was a test, one she intended to pass not with fear or anger, but with clarity, dignity, and intelligence. As she approached his table, she kept her posture straight and her steps steady. Each movement conveyed composure and professionalism, signaling that she was not intimidated. The man's eyes followed her, sharp and calculating, as if attempting to read her thoughts. He had clearly expected someone timid or overly deferential, someone who might apologize nervously and let his words go unchallenged. Instead, Anna arrived at his table with a quiet assurance that immediately disrupted his expectations. "Sir," she began, her voice calm but firm, "I want to address your concerns, because I believe every customer deserves to be heard and respected." She paused slightly, letting the words sink in, giving him space to understand that this was not just polite small talk. Her tone was measured, professional, and confident, carrying the authority of someone who knew her worth. The billionaire raised an eyebrow, leaning back slightly in his chair, clearly intrigued but still skeptical. He was accustomed to commanding attention through wealth and status, but Anna's demeanor suggested that he might be encountering resistance in a way he had never faced before. He watched her carefully, as if trying to predict the words she would say next. "I understand that you may be used to a certain level of service," Anna continued, maintaining eye contact, her voice steady and unwavering. "And I respect that. But respect is mutual. Being wealthy or powerful does not give anyone the right to insult or belittle others. Every person, regardless of their position, deserves to be treated with dignity." Her words were simple but powerful, a clear statement that her self-respect was non-negotiable. There was a brief pause as her words hung in the air. The café itself seemed to hold its breath. Other customers were discreetly watching the exchange, sensing the quiet tension and the display of courage. Anna could feel the attention but remained focused, channeling her energy into delivering her message with precision and poise. She was aware that this moment was pivotal. It was not only about responding to an insult but also about setting the tone for the rest of the interaction. The billionaire's lips pressed together slightly, and for the first time, his confident exterior showed signs of surprise. Anna continued, undeterred, her words flowing naturally and deliberately. I take pride in the work I do. Every order I serve, every smile I share with a customer, reflects the effort and care I put into my job. I have faced challenges, worked hard, and persevered through difficult circumstances. And I will not allow disrespect to overshadow the effort I give. She could see a flicker of something in his eyes, recognition, perhaps of the courage it took to stand firm in the face of someone who sought to dominate. He had likely underestimated the power of a calm, measured response, thinking that wealth and authority alone could silence opposition. But Anna's reply demonstrated that true strength came from confidence, self-respect, and clarity of purpose, not from money or status. As she spoke, Anna subtly incorporated a hint of reasoning and perspective that elevated her words beyond a personal defense. It is easy to judge someone based on appearances or assumptions, she said, her voice unwavering. But true understanding comes from seeing people as they are, not as we wish them to be. We all have value, contributions, and experiences that deserve acknowledgement. I hope that moving forward, we can approach interactions with respect, regardless of differences in wealth or status. Her words were not aggressive. They were thoughtful and intelligent. She did not attack him personally, but she held him accountable for his behavior in a way that was undeniable yet respectful. It was a masterful balance, asserting authority over her own dignity while refusing to escalate the confrontation. The silence that followed was palpable, as if the entire café collectively recognized the significance of what had just occurred. The billionaire leaned back, clearly caught off guard. His initial intent had been to assert dominance, to make Anna feel small or embarrassed, but instead, she had responded with clarity and confidence. Her words had disarmed him in a way that money and power rarely could. For the first time, he seemed unsure, perhaps even admiring her courage, though he would not admit it aloud. Anna smiled faintly, not in triumph over him, but as a reflection of her own self-assurance. She had spoken her truth with integrity and grace. She had demonstrated that composure, respect, and intelligence could command more attention and create a greater impression than wealth or intimidation ever could. The café hummed softly in the background, the everyday sounds of conversation and clinking cups continuing around them, but the focus of the room had subtly shifted. The attention was on the quiet, courageous woman who had stood her ground. She stepped back slightly, signaling that her point had been made, while still maintaining eye contact. The billionaire sat in stunned silence for a moment, processing the exchange. Anna had not shouted, she had not become angry, and she had not let fear control her. Yet she had effectively called out his behavior and asserted her own dignity. The moment was a turning point, an intersection between humility, strength, and integrity. Her colleagues, who had been busy with other tables, exchanged impressed glances, silently acknowledging her poise. Some customers whispered softly, recognizing the courage it took to speak so honestly and confidently to someone who seemed so powerful. Anna, however, remained calm, aware that the encounter was far from over, yet confident in the foundation she had just established. In this ordinary café, during what had seemed like a typical morning, Anna's response had transformed a tense confrontation into a display of courage and wisdom. She had proven that respect is earned, not demanded, and that true power lies not in wealth or intimidation, but in the quiet confidence to stand up for oneself with dignity. And as she returned to her usual duties, serving other customers with care and professionalism, she carried a renewed sense of empowerment, knowing that she had delivered a reply that was nothing short of perfect. The moment after Anna delivered her perfect reply, the café seemed to hold its breath. There was a quiet stillness that felt almost tangible, like the air itself was waiting for something to happen. Customers paused mid-sip of coffee or mid-bite of breakfast, their eyes flicking toward the corner table where the billionaire sat. He had leaned back in his chair initially, expecting to intimidate, belittle, and assert his power effortlessly. But Anna's calm, confident, and perfectly chosen words had shifted the dynamic entirely. The man's expression was frozen, a mixture of surprise, disbelief, and an almost unfamiliar humility flickering in his eyes. He had expected fear, hesitation, or even an apology. Instead, he faced a woman who had spoken her truth with unwavering composure, dignity, and intelligence. It was a shock, a confrontation he had not anticipated, and it rattled him deeply. For a man who was used to getting what he wanted simply by asserting his dominance, this was unprecedented. He leaned back slightly, trying to regain his composure, but it was clear that his mind was racing. Anna's words had penetrated more than he expected. She had not just defended herself. She had challenged the very assumption that wealth or status gave someone the right to insult another human being. The realization hit him like a cold wave. Money and power could intimidate, but they could not command respect. Respect had to be earned, and here he had failed. The billionaire looked around the cafe as if seeing it for the first time. He noticed the small smiles and whispers from other customers, subtle nods from colleagues, and the quiet admiration that lingered in the air. He realized that Anna's response had not just been a personal victory. It had subtly shifted the mood of the entire room. The people around them were witnessing a display of courage and dignity, and he could not deny its impact. It made him pause, something rare for someone who had spent a lifetime commanding attention and obedience. For a few moments he said nothing. His eyes remained fixed on Anna, studying her carefully. He was trying to decipher how she had found such perfect words, spoken with such calm authority, and remained unshaken in the face of his arrogance. In all his experiences, few people had ever challenged him in this way, and almost no one had done so without bitterness, anger, or fear. The combination of grace, intelligence, and courage was disarming, and he felt a strange sense of unease he wasn't used to. Anna, meanwhile, remained poised. She did not gloat, she did not smile triumphantly, and she did not press the advantage. Her calm exterior reflected her inner confidence and the quiet strength that had carried her through life's many challenges. She had stood her ground not to humiliate him, but to assert her dignity and make it clear that respect was not something to be taken lightly. Every detail, her steady voice, measured tone, composed posture, reinforced the message she had delivered. The billionaire shifted slightly in his chair, realizing that he had underestimated her. He had assumed that wealth and status would automatically command submission, that a sharp insult would crush her spirit, and that a woman working a modest job would falter under his scrutiny. Instead, he was confronted with the truth. Intelligence, courage, and integrity could overpower arrogance. This realization struck him with an intensity he hadn't experienced in years. He reflected inwardly on his past interactions with others. He had often relied on money and influence to maintain control, assuming people would respect him simply because of who he was. He remembered moments when employees had flinched, when service staff had hesitated, and when friends or colleagues had agreed with him out of fear rather than genuine respect. Anna's words forced him to confront an uncomfortable truth. His approach had often failed to cultivate real respect, and his arrogance had left him isolated in many ways. The billionaire's mind began to shift. He thought about the qualities Anna displayed: poise under pressure, clarity in communication, and unwavering self-respect. He realized that these were the traits that truly commanded admiration, far more than any material wealth he possessed. For the first time in a long while, he felt humbled, as if a small but powerful lesson had been delivered to him in the most unexpected way. As he sat there quietly, the realization deepened. He understood that real power was not about intimidation, insults, or asserting dominance. True influence came from integrity, empathy, and the ability to connect with others on a human level. Anna had exemplified all of these qualities in a single interaction, leaving him to grapple with the stark contrast between her values and his own. It was a moment of awakening, a rare glimpse into the fact that respect could not be bought or demanded. It could only be earned. The atmosphere in the cafe subtly shifted as well. Patrons who had been watching intently seemed to relax, as if the tension that had filled the room had begun to dissipate. Some exchanged glances, quietly impressed by Anna's courage and composure. Even her colleagues, who had seen her handle difficult situations before, recognized that this was extraordinary, a display of intelligence and bravery that commanded attention and respect. Finally, the billionaire exhaled slowly, a gesture that seemed to release some of the tension within him. Though he remained silent, his body language had changed. The sharpness in his eyes had softened slightly, and a flicker of reflection replaced the arrogance he had carried when he first entered the café. For the first time, he was reconsidering not just this interaction, but the way he had treated people throughout his life. Anna, sensing that her point had been made, returned to her tasks with the same calm professionalism as before. She didn't celebrate or boast. She simply continued to do her job with dignity and care. Yet the impact of her words lingered. The billionaire's shock and growing realization served as a quiet acknowledgement of her strength. She had transformed a moment meant to belittle and intimidate into a powerful lesson in respect and human decency. In that ordinary café, amidst the everyday sounds of conversation and clinking coffee cups, an extraordinary moment had unfolded. One person had tried to assert dominance through insult and power, and the other had met it with intelligence, composure, and integrity. The billionaire's shock and growing realization were proof of the power of courage and self-respect, a lesson he would not soon forget. And as Anna continued her work, moving gracefully between tables and attending to customers with care, she carried with her a quiet sense of triumph. She had demonstrated that even in the face of wealth, arrogance, and intimidation, a person's character could shine through and make a lasting impact. The encounter had not just revealed her strength to the man at the corner table, but to everyone present, and the lesson of respect, dignity, and integrity hung in the air like a subtle. The silence lingered for a moment after Anna's perfect reply, the tension in the café slowly easing, but not entirely disappearing. The billionaire, who had spent the past several minutes silently absorbing her words, now shifted in his chair. His body language had softened slightly, though he still carried an air of authority. Something had clearly changed inside him. The arrogance that had initially filled the room was no longer dominant. It had been replaced by a quiet introspection. For the first time that morning, he truly saw Anna, not just as a waitress, but as a person with dignity, intelligence, and courage. He realized that the very traits he had admired in business, the traits that had helped him rise to the top, were mirrored in her calm and confident demeanor. The way she had stood up to him, not with anger but with composed self-respect, left a deep impression on him. He sat silently for a moment, studying her, trying to understand how someone could remain so composed and unshaken under such pressure. Her words had not only challenged him, they had illuminated a flaw in himself. He had often relied on wealth and authority to command respect, but Anna had demonstrated that true respect could only be earned, not demanded. He felt a strange combination of surprise, respect, and, most unexpectedly, admiration. Slowly, he leaned forward in his chair, clearing his throat. His voice, once sharp and intimidating, was now softer, more reflective. I must admit I did not expect that, he said carefully. His words carried a hint of humility, a tone he rarely used. Anna looked up at him, her expression calm, waiting to see how this extraordinary man would respond next. I have been mistaken, he continued, choosing his words slowly. I assumed that authority and success gave me the right to treat others as I pleased. I see now that I was wrong. You've reminded me that true respect is not given, it's earned. And it's earned through courage, integrity, and character, not wealth or position. His voice, though measured, carried the weight of sincerity. Anna could sense that this was more than a superficial apology. He was genuinely reflecting on his behavior. The cafe had gone quiet again, but this time it wasn't tense. Instead, the customers seemed to sense a shift, a subtle moment of transformation taking place right before their eyes. Anna remained composed, her posture relaxed but confident. She understood that this was the unexpected turn the morning had been building toward. A moment where confrontation could transform into understanding, where arrogance could give way to humility, and where judgment could be replaced by respect. I apologize for my earlier words, he said, finally meeting her gaze directly. It was uncalled for and disrespectful. I hope you can accept my apology. There was a pause, and Anna felt the sincerity of his tone. She considered the best response. After all, this was not just about accepting an apology, but about modeling the grace and integrity she had been demonstrating all along. With a calm smile, she nodded. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your apology. We all make mistakes, and acknowledging them is the first step toward understanding. I respect your willingness to do that. Her reply was measured, gracious, and empowering, reinforcing the dignity she had maintained throughout the encounter. She did not belittle him, and she did not gloat. She simply acknowledged his words and gave him the space to reflect further. The billionaire paused, almost as if surprised by her response. He had expected defensiveness, perhaps even resentment, but instead, Anna had responded with calm and composure. Her ability to handle the situation with dignity impressed him more than any business strategy or financial achievement ever could. It was a reminder that strength was not about asserting dominance. It was about self-respect, empathy, and grace. He leaned back slightly, his fingers lightly drumming on the table. You have remarkable courage, he said quietly. I have met many people, but few can stand their ground so firmly without hostility or arrogance. You've taught me an important lesson today, though you may not realize it. His voice carried genuine admiration now, and Anna felt a quiet satisfaction, not from his praise, but from the knowledge that integrity had triumphed over intimidation. Around them, the café seemed to return to its normal rhythm, yet the interaction had left a lingering impact. Other customers who had been observing the exchange now glanced at Anna with admiration, recognizing her bravery and poise. Even her colleagues, who had seen her handle difficult customers before, were impressed by the depth of her composure and the effectiveness of her response. Anna herself remained grounded, focusing on her work while quietly acknowledging the positive shift that had occurred. The billionaire continued, his tone thoughtful. I have spent a lifetime acquiring wealth, influence, and power, and yet, today, a single act of integrity and courage has reminded me of what truly matters. Money and status can command attention, but they cannot command respect. Respect must be earned, and it is the essence of human interaction. His words were slow and deliberate, reflecting an inner realization that had been triggered by Anna's calm but firm stance. Anna felt a quiet sense of validation, not because of his words or recognition, but because the encounter had proven a deeper truth, that self-respect, courage, and integrity could create meaningful change even in the face of intimidation and arrogance. She had stood her ground, upheld her values, and shown that dignity was more powerful than fear or submission. The billionaire finally offered a small, respectful nod. I hope that I can carry this lesson forward, not just in my interactions with you, but in how I treat everyone, he said. His words were genuine, leaving no doubt that he had been affected by her courage. Anna responded with a composed smile, signaling that the moment had reached its natural resolution, though its impact would ripple far beyond the café walls. In that ordinary café, on a morning that had begun like any other, an extraordinary turn had occurred. A man used to power and intimidation had been confronted with dignity, composure, and courage, and it had transformed his perspective. Anna's quiet strength and integrity had not only changed the course of a tense encounter, but had also left a lasting impression on everyone present. As she returned to her regular tasks, serving coffee, taking orders, and attending to other customers, Anna carried with her a quiet sense of triumph. The encounter had not ended in hostility, nor had it been resolved with anger or fear. Instead, it had reached a moment of understanding and reflection, a rare and unexpected turn that highlighted the transformative power of respect, courage, and integrity. After the tension had finally eased in the café, Anna returned to her regular routine, pouring coffee, serving breakfast, and attending to her customers with her usual calm efficiency. Yet, she could feel a subtle shift in the atmosphere around her. The encounter with the billionaire had been extraordinary, and its impact was not limited to that single table. It had begun to ripple through the entire café, affecting both the people who had witnessed it and, more importantly, the man himself. The billionaire sat quietly for a few more moments, his fingers tapping lightly against the polished surface of the table. He seemed lost in thought, reflecting deeply on the interaction he had just experienced. He had come into the cafe intending to assert his dominance, confident that his wealth and power would intimidate anyone in his path. Yet, in the span of a few minutes, a simple act of courage and dignity had turned the encounter completely around. For the first time in a long time, he realized that respect was something far more valuable than authority or money, and that the way one treats others could leave a lasting impression far beyond immediate outcomes. As Anna moved between tables, she noticed subtle changes in the behavior of those around her. Customers who had been observing the confrontation now spoke to her with renewed warmth and admiration. Some quietly complimented her on how she had handled the difficult situation, while others shared subtle smiles of appreciation for the courage she had shown. Even her colleagues exchanged knowing glances, silently acknowledging that what had just taken place was not an everyday event. Anna felt a quiet sense of satisfaction, not from the praise itself, but from knowing that integrity, courage, and calm composure could leave such a meaningful impression. The ripple effect extended to the billionaire in ways he did not fully anticipate. While he had initially entered the cafe expecting to be in control, he now felt a sense of humility. Anna's words had awakened something within him, a recognition that human connection, empathy, and mutual respect were far more powerful than any financial influence he wielded. He realized that his previous approach to interacting with others had often been flawed, that he had relied too heavily on intimidation and authority rather than fostering genuine understanding and respect. He found himself studying Anna more closely, noticing the details that had gone beyond the surface. Her calm posture, steady voice, and composed demeanor revealed a depth of character he had seldom seen. She had demonstrated courage without aggression, confidence without arrogance, and respect without compromise. It was a rare combination, one that challenged his assumptions about people and power. The billionaire began to reflect on the way he treated not only employees and service staff but also peers, family, and acquaintances. He realized that his wealth had often blinded him to the simple yet profound value of dignity and integrity. Around the cafe, a subtle energy lingered. Regular customers whispered softly, sharing their observations with friends and neighbors. Some of them had seen difficult situations handled poorly many times before, and Anna's composure stood in sharp contrast. The way she handled the billionaire's insult and confrontation had set a standard, demonstrating that even in ordinary settings, acts of courage and integrity could create extraordinary influence. The ripple effect was not just in the immediate room. It was an example that would linger in people's minds, inspiring them long after they had left the cafe. Meanwhile, the billionaire finally spoke again, his voice quieter and reflective. "You've given me something I didn't expect today," he said, choosing his words carefully. "I've spent a lifetime learning to assert power, to make my influence felt, and yet, a few simple words from you have taught me a lesson more important than any I have learned in business. You've reminded me that respect is earned, not demanded." Anna listened politely, her calm smile acknowledging the sincerity in his tone. She didn't respond with self-congratulation or boastfulness. She simply allowed the lesson to resonate, recognizing that the impact of her actions went far beyond the immediate interaction. The ripple effect continued as she served other tables. Customers who had witnessed the confrontation now approached her with renewed warmth, making small talk or offering genuine smiles of encouragement. Anna felt a quiet pride, not in personal recognition, but in the knowledge that her actions had created a positive influence, showing that courage, dignity, and integrity could affect others profoundly. In many ways, she had demonstrated that everyday moments, even ordinary encounters, could become opportunities for meaningful change. Back at his table, the billionaire sat silently, reflecting further. He realized that this experience would influence his behavior in the future. He thought about how he could treat people differently, how he could approach interactions with humility and respect, and how small acts of acknowledgement and kindness could build connections far stronger than intimidation or displays of wealth. Anna's actions had created a ripple effect within him, inspiring self-reflection and perhaps a subtle desire for personal growth. As the morning progressed, the café slowly returned to its normal rhythm. Customers chatted, orders were taken and served, and the usual buzz of activity resumed. Yet, the impact of the encounter lingered, like a quiet undercurrent beneath the daily routine. Anna continued her work with the same dedication and professionalism, her calm demeanor unaffected by the extraordinary events that had unfolded. But the lessons she had imparted, and the ripple effect they had triggered, remained in the air, touching the minds and hearts of those who had witnessed them. The billionaire eventually rose to leave, his posture more relaxed, his expression contemplative. He approached Anna one last time. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "You've shown me the importance of respect, courage, and integrity in a way I will not forget. I hope to carry this forward in all my interactions." Anna smiled politely, nodding in acknowledgement. There were no grand gestures, no dramatic finale, yet the impact was unmistakable. A moment that had begun as an ordinary morning encounter had transformed into a profound exchange, leaving both of them changed in subtle but significant ways. As he departed, customers resumed their conversations, some quietly recounting what they had just witnessed. Anna continued her work with quiet efficiency, but inside, she felt the satisfaction of knowing that her actions had created meaningful change. The ripple effect of courage, dignity, and integrity extended far beyond a single interaction, touching minds, inspiring reflection, and reminding everyone present that even small acts could have extraordinary consequences. By the end of the day, Anna had proven something profound. Ordinary people, through courage and integrity, can create ripples that influence others far beyond their immediate reach. A single act of self-respect and composure had transformed a tense encounter into a lasting lesson in humility and respect, leaving everyone in its path, especially the billionaire, forever changed.